One early morning in 1930, a strange iron crate washed up on a California beach, catching the eye of curious onlookers with its odd shape. When they pried it open, they were shocked to find the body of an unidentified man inside. He was dressed in clothes unlike anything locals wore, leaving everyone puzzled and uneasy. A coroner's report later confirmed he drowned, with death occurring roughly 24 hours earlier. The mysterious case faded into obscurity over time, but 67 years later in 1997, a young man went missing. During a routine investigation, local police were stunned to discover that the unidentified body from 1930 was, in fact, this young man, missing for just a few months. Before vanishing, he'd been tinkering with a time machine. Today, I'm diving into the wild story of the most shocking time travel experiment of the 20th century, led by none other than Madman Marcum. Mike Marcum, born in 1974, was your average American guy, no fancy family background or stellar grades. What set him apart was his obsession with electronics, likely sparked by his dad, a skilled electrician. As a kid, Mike spent hours in the garage with his father, fixing all sorts of electrical gadgets. As an adult, Mike enrolled at Rio Grande Community College in Ohio, studying electrical engineering for 2 years. In 1994, he met a girl and moved to 401 East Church Street in Stanberry, Missouri. Their relationship didn't last, but Mike fell in love with the small town and stayed, picking up a job as a supermarket clerk. In his free time, he'd hole up in his garage, tweaking and building electrical devices. Sometimes he'd run small experiments. One day, he stumbled across the concept of a Jacob's ladder, a high-voltage device that creates an electric arc. It works like this. 2 V-shaped metal rods sit atop insulators. When high voltage is applied, an arc forms at the base. The arc heats the surrounding air, causing it to rise and carry the arc upward, looking like it's climbing a ladder. Once it reaches the top, the voltage can't sustain it. The arc dies, and a new one sparks at the base, repeating the cycle. Mike thought this was awesome and decided to build one. The catch? It needed massive voltage, way more than the standard 110 V in American homes. Undeterred, Mike crafted a transformer, winding more coils on one end and fewer on the other to boost the voltage to a whopping 20,000 V. But voltage alone wasn't enough. The arc required a stable environment. Changes in voltage, temperature, or humidity could mess it up. To stabilize things, Mike salvaged a laser from an old CD player, using it to heat the air around the conductors, making it easier for the arc to form. Everything went as planned. The arc appeared, climbing beautifully. But then, out of nowhere, it froze at the base and stopped moving. Curious, Mike leaned in for a closer look and noticed the air around the machine was weirdly distorted. At that moment, Mike figured the warped air was just a trick of the light, caused by hot and cold air currents mixing, kinda like the shimmery heat waves you see rising off hot pavement on a sunny day. But he couldn't be totally sure what it was. To play it safe, he grabbed a nearby screw from his workbench and tossed it toward the distortion, half expecting a spark or something electrical. Instead, something wild happened. The screw vanished right into thin air. Mike froze for a few seconds, stunned. Then, he heard a clink behind him. Turning around, there it was, the same screw, lying on the floor. How could that be? He'd thrown it forward, yet it reappeared behind him. Curious and a bit freaked out, Mike picked it up and repeated the toss 3 more times. Each time, the screw disappeared in front, only to pop up behind him seconds later. This wasn't some simple air convection, it had to be a portal, a gateway that transported objects 2 seconds into the future, but spat them out right behind him. Holy crap, Mike thought. I gotta capture this on video right now. He dashed over to his neighbor's place and borrowed an old VHS camcorder. But by the time he got back to the garage, the device was overheating and sparking, on the verge of burning out. It didn't take Mike long to decide. He needed to rebuild it, but bigger and more stable this time. To prove the portal really worked, he planned to scale up the Jacob's ladder from its original 18 inches to a massive 8 feet tall. That meant cranking the voltage to at least 70,000 volts, which required a much beefier transformer. A setup like that would cost around $13,600, way more than Mike had. Then he remembered an abandoned power station nearby in King City, Missouri, packed with exactly what he needed. He called a buddy, borrowed a pickup truck, and with some help, hauled 6 huge transformers home. The biggest one weighed a whopping 350 pounds. In a later radio interview on Coast to Coast AM, the host asked why he needed 6 transformers. But what really blew the host's mind was that Mike did the whole heist in broad daylight, not under cover of night. Back home, Mike got to work assembling the beast. It was too big for the garage, so he moved it to his backyard. On January 5th, 1995, it was finally ready. Excited, he flipped the switch. A bright flash lit up the room, and then total blackout. Not just his house, but according to Mike, his experiment knocked out power for about 20,000 residents in nearby St. Joseph. He quickly realized the issue and tweaked the setup. On the second try, a massive boom and blinding light filled the air. And there it was, the distorted air pocket again. Without hesitating, Mike started hurling random objects from his table into it. Sure enough, they all vanished. But this time, nothing reappeared after 2 seconds. They were gone for good. In follow-up tests, he threw in all sorts of materials: pens, wood, rocks, metal bits. No matter what, everything got sucked in and never came back. Mike had no clue where they ended up. Another dimension, the past, the future. With the higher voltage, maybe they traveled farther through time and space. Then a wild thought hit him. If objects could go through, what about living things? Would they get fried on entry? To test it, he tossed in a hamster. Poof, it disappeared too. That's when a chilling idea crept in. Mike started seriously wondering, should he step into this time tunnel himself? But just as he was planning his next move, trouble came knocking. On the morning of January 29, 1995, 8 armed police officers stormed his house. At first, Mike thought maybe a neighbor had spotted his weird machine and tipped off the cops about the stolen transformers from the King City power plant. Turns out, it wasn't that. Neighbors had seen Mike's friend wandering around the backyard with what looked like a gun, raising fears of some shady activity. Mike laughed it off, pulling out the gun, just a BB toy pistol. But then, the cops noticed the massive transformers in his backyard, which matched the ones reported stolen by St. Joseph Light and Power in King City. That was enough to slap cuffs on him. Mike got hit with a 60-day jail sentence and 5 years of probation. Somehow, the media caught wind of it, and soon headlines were screaming, "Time machine inventor locked up," and "Madman's time travel dream derailed." One article even claimed that when Mike's machine ran, it caused blackouts or dimmed neighbors' lights, ticking everyone off. The story blew up, grabbing the attention of the entire U.S., including the wildly popular radio show Coast to Coast AM, hosted by Art Bell, known for diving into the paranormal, aliens, and government conspiracies. Eager to satisfy curious listeners, Art reached out to Mike right after his release, becoming the only person to interview him 3 times. Art called it one of his greatest interviews ever, convinced Mike had actually built a time machine. Being a sharp guy with some electrical know-how, Art grilled Mike with technical questions, and Mike's answers were logical and airtight. His experiments were so mind-blowing that Art dubbed him Mike Madman Marcum, and the nickname stuck. Despite Art's enthusiasm, plenty of listeners were skeptical. After the Coast to Coast episodes aired, Mike's story became a national sensation, catching the eye of scientists too. Some academics shot it down, saying time travel was impossible with current tech. But here's the thing, they'd never seen or tested Mike's setup. According to Einstein's theory of general relativity, time travel is theoretically possible. Physicist Frank Tipler proposed the Tipler cylinder. Take material 10 times the sun's mass, shape it into an infinitely long cylinder, spin it at insane speeds with massive energy, and you could pass through it to travel through time. The idea hinges on warping gravitational fields. We know black holes have such intense gravity that time slows down near them compared to farther away. If someone got close to a black hole and returned to Earth, they'd find thousands of years had passed, basically time traveling to the future. But today's tech can't get us near a black hole safely, let alone build an infinite gravity cylinder. So, skeptics doubted Mike's claims. His response? Sure, but I'm not using gravity fields. I'm working with electromagnetic fields. That was the game changer. In later experiments, Mike didn't just scale up his machine, he added spinning magnets to create a plasma vortex, all to prep for a real time travel attempt. His only worry now? If he stepped into that time tunnel, would he end up somewhere safe? After all, he still had no idea where all those objects, or that hamster, had actually gone. What if the landing spot was high up in the sky? He'd plummet to his death. Or what if it dumped him in the middle of the ocean, drowning for sure? The scariest part is, history has some eerie parallels that make this all too real. Take the infamous Philadelphia experiment back on October 28, 1943. The U.S. Navy destroyer USS Eldridge was docked at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in Pennsylvania, loaded with tons of experimental electronic gear and two massive magnetic generators positioned near the forward arrest. These were meant to create a powerful electromagnetic field, distributed through huge coils on the deck. The goal? World War II was raging, and the Navy wanted a way to make ships invisible to enemy radar. They thought a special magnetic field could bend light or radar waves around the vessel, and it worked too well. According to eyewitness accounts, the Eldridge didn't just vanish from radar, it disappeared entirely from the harbor in a greenish fog. A nearby worker claimed he couldn't believe his eyes. Later leaks suggested the ship had teleported over 200 miles to Norfolk, Virginia, reappearing there briefly before zapping back to Philadelphia. But the crew paid a heavy price. Some went into hysterical fits, screaming uncontrollably. Others were fused into the ship's hull in grotesque ways. And get this, the time on board was 10 minutes behind everyone else's clocks. The Navy has always denied it happened, calling it a hoax. But over the years, more alleged participants have come forward swearing it was real. Crazy coincidence? Mike's time machine relied on the same electromagnetic principles. No wonder he was sweating about where he'd end up. Mess up, and he'd relive the Philadelphia horror firsthand. But it's not just man-made weirdness. Nature has its own teleportation tricks. In February 2023, after a massive downpour in the remote outback town of Lajamanu, Australia, hundreds of miles from the nearest major river, residents found live spangled perch flopping all over the ground. Experts chalked it up to waterspouts sucking fish from distant waters and dropping them inland. But skeptics point out, how do these twisters carry fish so far without killing them? This isn't a one-off. Back in 1921, renowned ichthyologist Eugene W. Gudger published an article in the American Museum Journal compiling dozens of fish rains worldwide. One standout. In September 1839, near the Sundarbans mangrove forest, about 20 miles south of Calcutta, now Kolkata, in India, fish fell in a straight line, like they'd popped through some invisible rift, not scattered randomly. Reports of raining animals date back centuries, from fish to frogs and even snakes. And oddly, it's often the same species each time, not a mix of whatever's in the area. If waterspouts are to blame, why not scoop up everything nearby? Some folks theorize that under certain conditions, space-time glitches open up, yanking fitting objects, or creatures, through to another spot instantly. Fast forward back to 1995. Fresh off his interview with Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM, Mike shared that he was dying to keep experimenting. But his gear, mostly stolen, confiscated by cops during his arrest. Plus, after jail, his landlord evicted him, freaked out about more high-voltage hijinks. Art, ever the supporter, offered to fund him on air. Listeners piled on too, donating cash, spots to work, even transformers. With all that help, Mike built his third machine in a steel frame house in Kansas City, Missouri. The first version ran on 20,000 volts, the second, 70,000. This beast? A whopping 3 million volts, standing 15 feet tall. He added spinning magnets to whip up a plasma vortex inside. At first, it was glitchy. Objects thrown in came out scorched. But Mike tweaked it, discovering that wrapping stuff in a special metal container let it pass through smoothly. Pumped up, he invited his donors to witness the next test run. Below is a rewritten version of the content in the provided text, closely following each sentence and idea while making it natural, engaging, and suitable for a YouTube video narration. All spelling, grammar, and phrasing errors are corrected, the core ideas are preserved, and the tone is conversational yet clear, with minor details added for accuracy without going off topic. The language avoids verbatim repetition and is tailored for an American English audience. Here's the deal. According to several donors who were there, once Mike's machine was ready, they saw objects thrown into the time portal vanish right in front of them. Unlike the second experiment, where stuff disappeared for good, this time the items popped back up about 2 minutes later, but 50 to 150 yards away, always to the east or west of the test site. Why just those directions? Mike figured it might be tied to Earth's rotation, but he didn't have a solid explanation. He didn't sweat that mystery too much, though. Once he confirmed objects could safely return, Mike started planning to step through the portal himself. During his second interview with Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM on October 8, 1996, he excitedly shared his plan. Art, totally hyped, asked if his crew could film the whole time travel experiment. Mike was like, "Absolutely, let's do it." But right after that interview, Mike vanished without a trace. Some thought he jumped the gun and tested it early. Others worried he'd met a bad end. Around this time, a listener called into Art's show, mentioning a 1930 case where an unidentified man's body was found in a metal drum on a California beach, sparking theories that it might have been Mike. Shockingly, 2 years later in 1997, when everyone assumed he was gone for good, Mike reappeared and called Art for a third interview. He admitted he couldn't hold back and had gone through with the experiment ahead of schedule. That day, without hesitating, he stepped into the portal. What happened next was beyond wild. His body was engulfed in swirling colors and lights, spinning through a surreal tunnel where time felt like it stretched forever. Every second dragged on like eternity. Mike saw particles forming and vanishing, chaotic images of what looked like battles from unknown wars. He realized time in the tunnel was all over the place. Sometimes it froze, letting him see the microscopic essence of things. Other times, it raced forward or crawled slowly. He felt like he might be the first person to truly travel through time. Just as he was soaking in this unreal experience, some unknown force yanked him out. Everything went dark, and he blacked out. When he woke up, he was in a remote spot in Fairfield, Iowa, broke and, worst of all, without any memory of who he was or why he was there. He wandered aimlessly until he ended up at a homeless shelter. There, he slowly pieced together his location. Life was rough for an amnesiac, Mike. Each day, a struggle. Then one day, flashes hit him. Vivid tunnels, glowing lights, his complex machine. Bit by bit, his memories returned. He recalled building the time machine and everything that happened in the portal. The kicker? It was now 1997, meaning he'd jumped 2 years into the future. To the world, he'd been gone that long. To him, it felt like a few days. Rushing back to Kansas City, Mike found his steel-framed house empty. The machine, blueprints, donor lists, all gone, like someone had wiped the place clean. He felt helpless, but wasn't ready to give up. He still knew every step to rebuild it. Still, this twist made skeptics double down, calling him a con artist. He disappeared right after agreeing to let Art film, and only about 15 people had ever seen his machine in action. Some wondered why he never recorded those early tests, like the Jacob's ladder that burned out before he could grab a camera, or the later ones. But online defenders argued it wasn't Mike hiding proof. Maybe the government stepped in, since others who've spilled similar secrets often face threats. Could they have taken his machine? Others said, unless Mike was nuts, he had no reason to fake it. He never chased fame. Art had to beg him for those interviews. Every cent of donor money went into the machine, with detailed updates sent to supporters. If he wanted cash, he could have written a book. Art even offered to fund one, but Mike said no. In one chat, Art asked if he'd use time travel to win the lottery. Mike's straight-up answer? Nope, he was all about the science. From that final 1997 interview, we know Mike's still out there, working to rebuild his time machine. So, what do you think? Is he a total madman, or did he actually pull off the impossible? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that subscribe button for more crazy stories, and check out my other videos if you've got time. See you next time.